I'm going to pop us up on the Facebook Live. So everybody's aware. You'll be all over the interwebs. Your beautiful faces.
Do it.
For a minute. Here we go.
Excuse me.
Get this going, and then I'll just make a couple announcements and then let Bill take it away. Just make sure that it's going.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Go live. How's your computer going, Bill?
It's making progress.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if I can get this live thing going, and then we'll be off to the races. It's setting up.
Streaming live on Facebook.
It's like showing me setup on my side for some reason.
Yeah.
Is it working over there?
Yeah,
There it goes. Okay.
that means we have to be on our best behavior, right, Dana?
No, you have to be on your most kooky. We need this to be entertaining. Okay, so you guys who are looking at Facebook, it's showing over there. I don't want to turn it on because the audio will get funky funk. I'll close it. I'll look at it on my phone. Oh yeah, we're good.
Hey, Maddie.
All right, I got a couple more
Hi,
people in
Maddie.
the waiting room. Let me let these guys in. Okay, Liz and Laura, welcome. And anybody else who I missed welcoming, I apologize. I think I got you all. Are we recording? We are. Okay, great. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dana Sargent. I'm the current director here at Cape Fear River Watch. I just want to share a couple announcements before introducing our speaker. So first of all, we have our summer membership raffle happening right now. Did I break up? I looked like I broke up.
A little bit.
Okay, we have our summer membership raffle happening right now, and that is through August 31st. So just go to the website. If you go to capefearriverwatch.org and click join or renew, that's all you got to do. You're automatically entered if you do that before September 1st. And this year we're spicing it up a little bit. I think most of you, probably all of you, saw the video, the short film that Kemp was on with a really amazing filmmaker from California, where they went and toured the Three Sisters. And we got a lot of buzz and everybody asking, can we go, can we go? So we're making our membership raffle a choose your own adventure. We have our boat, our new boat that was bought last year with support of the Orton Foundation. So you can either go on a trip on the boat, or you can go to the Three Sisters, you and three guests, led by Mr. Kemp Burdett. So it should be super fun. So I encourage you, and if you're already a member, don't worry. If you renew now, it will just tack on to the end of your membership. The time, another year will tack on. So great time to join or renew. So please do it. Good morning, Jean.
Hello.
How are you?
Okay.
Good. It's good to see you. We're just doing announcements. And then August 4th, next week, the DEQ, the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, is holding a virtual forum on Chemours. I don't even know what to say about it. Chemours water quality, air quality, soil quality issue, the little issue they have over there at Chemours. They haven't really, DEQ hasn't really pinpointed a specific reason for the virtual forum. They did mention the permit request at Old Outfall 2, which is now Outfall 3. Cape Fear River Watch, with the help from SELC, has put together a little document that might support anybody who wants to go or join or make comments. That is on our website as well. And if you are getting our emails, which I hope all of you are, you would have gotten it in your Wednesday email. If not, just head to our website, capefearriverwatch.org, and click Advocacy. And then you'll see the Gen X tab, and that's where it is. It's a document sort of describing the three kind of primary issues right now going on up there that we want to make sure that are talked about. The last thing for plugging August 5th next week, we're doing a Environment NC and Sierra Club are hosting a panel discussion at, I believe, 6 p.m. on August 5th. This is a PFAS discussion. Dr. Jamie DeWitt will be there. Emily Donovan, the co-founder of Clean Cape Fear, and myself are on the panel. And that is in conjunction with a virtual screening of Dark Waters. You don't have to have seen the film, but I think the conversation will sort of be led by the Dark Waters screening. So that's August 5th next week, and that is also on our website. Couple more things. I know there's a lot of announcements today. Striper Fest, we officially canceled the banquet. Boo boo, but you know, we're hoping that we'll be able to hold it in March. So if you have a ticket and you want to hold it for next March, we will do that. Otherwise, you can contact us for a refund, or feel free to donate the cost of your tickets if you don't want to save them for next year. Greenfield Lake. We did get approval from the city to open up the boathouse with some new standards of procedure that Patrick put together, some safety procedures. And so we are working on that, getting everything cleaned up, getting everything prepped. So keep your eyes out for the announcement of the opening of Greenfield Lake. I'm super excited about that. There are a couple other things in the land of advocacy, but I'm going to skip that because I'm running into Bill's time a little too much.
No. Going. Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because your computer's almost there? Okay.
It's getting close, yeah.
All right, cool.
Stall.
So last week, or 2 weeks ago maybe, Cape Fear Watershed was part of a lawsuit against the Trump administration for their rollbacks and tweaking of NEPA, the most important environmental protection that has been basically working since its inception to make sure that things that are put together in a way that involves public comment and involves environmental studies. And he's tried to strip these protections away. So we were part of a lawsuit, and there are more to come. Our lawsuit was filed. We were one of the first.
Where'd you go?
They put together a really cool map and a whole bunch of data showing all the poultry facilities that have popped up in our region. Knowing that the hog facilities are not able they're on a moratorium to create more hog facilities, that kind of leaves the poultry industry as the big boom. So they've taken advantage of that. And so this is a really, really important report. I encourage you to take a look at it. We've shared it in all our channels. And again, if you're not on our email list, please do that. Just go to the website and click the button that says join newsletter and get on that. You'll get all this stuff every week in a really beautiful email.
Dana, you went silent for about 30 seconds toward the end of your NEPA.
Oh, bummer. Okay. Well, so we sued the Trump administration, and then a bunch of other people also sued in the same week. So we think that, this is good news, that there's a lot of organizations getting behind this, and we'll hope to keep it stalled for as long as we need to. Anything else about that? And then Eagles Island Paddles, if anybody's interested, Kaylin and Audrey they're both co-leading these great tours around Eagles Island. Please email Kaylin, Kaylynn @cfrw.us if you'd like to join on one of their paddles. And I think that is it. I know that was a lot of announcements. Thank you for your patience. Good morning, Shantae.
Hey, good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Good, good, good. All right, so I have one more thing while Bill's computer is is working away. I'm going to introduce him.
Really close.
Sweet. So here's a little bit about Dr. Hunt. Dr. Hunt is the leader of NC State's Stormwater Engineering Group with a focus on low impact development and green infrastructure. He has co-authored more than 120 peer-reviewed journal articles, one book, and many extension publications. His team has designed and/or monitored more than 250 stormwater control measures. Every year, he conducts 20 to 25 workshops in North Carolina, the US, and abroad. Dr. Hunt loves people and sharing a good laugh. Wolfpack sports are both a blessing and a bane, but such is life for a fan of the underdog. Traveling and his kids bring him his greatest joy in life. And I have one addition to your bio. I got an email from Roger Shue yesterday, and he said to tell him I say he is the godfather of stormwater, and that is more like James Brown instead of Marlon Brando. So I thought I'd pass that along.
That is
And you know, Bill, I know you're not really much on Facebook, but I did put I put the Godfather of Stormwater on the live preview. So that's officially your name. I'm thinking since we're having such a tough time with connections this morning, maybe the weather, it would be good if everybody, now that we've seen your beautiful faces, stop your videos. I do think that helps a little bit. I'm going to stop mine as well.
I don't know how to stop mine.
And then we will let Dr. Hunt take it away. I can stop your video, Oh, you did it.
Okay. So just as a quick preview for what's been going on, and I appreciate Dana so much giving her an influence and actually cutting out a few times as my computer had as much opportunity as possible to work. I have, Dana, I think it's all set to go. If you let me in, I'm gonna mute.
Bill, you're muted.
All right. What I'm trying to do is join our meeting. I've gotten everything working but that. So I'm trying to join our meeting right now.
Looks like I just let you in. You should be able to pop in there.
Is there a meeting? Let's see. Do I need to have a code? I don't think I do I?
No. You're showing,
So,
I see you. I see you're down there twice because I see your face and then the other one that just says Bill Hunt.
all right. Let's see if I'm going to share my screen. All right.
All right, hold on.
All right, let's see. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, and let the people say amen. Great. We needed every one of those 20 some odd minutes. All right.
Oh, you fucked up.
You guys see me okay?
We're good.
All right. So thank you for that introduction. I'm sorry there's such a delayed start. If I cut out, please just let me know and I'll try to backtrack. Not knowing what everybody knows about stormwater, I'm going to give you a very short primer. All right. When it rains, bad things can happen. If it rains too much, or it rains on impermeable surfaces, or it rains on surfaces that are disturbed, you can get major sediment plumes. You can get a lot of nutrients coming into our waters, and as a result, that impacts fish health. And particularly along the beach, we have an issue with coastal waters and estuaries being contaminated. One of the things you'll learn about me is you'll see lots of pictures of my progeny, because as Dana mentioned in my bio, they give me the greatest joys in life. And plus, I'm slowly but surely brainwashing them into being future ecological engineers. Okay, so once we've identified that stormwater has problems, we, as an engineering community, and I am an engineer, install practices that are considered solutions or partial solutions, things like ponds, wetlands, and bio-infiltration basins. In fact, on the bottom right in this picture is one that we built in Wilmington, and it's gone already, which was just simply heartbreaking. That was up at the Tidal Creek Co-op. Larry, thank you for UNCW taking it and destroying our stormwater control measure. Are you guys all muted? Okay, I get it. Hopefully you're laughing, Larry.
I'm laughing. I'm laughing.
So my main job, though I have a few, my main job is to test what I would consider generally innovative. Some are certainly more innovative than others. And essentially learn how well they work. And if they do work well, is to help get them used all over the state of North Carolina. So that's my main job. And so what I'm going to specifically do today is focus on our work in and around Wilmington. I have a couple pictures here. One is from over a decade ago, and one was shot yesterday or 2 days ago. You can see the family's grown. But during this time, actually an entire decade prior to that, I've been coming down to this beautiful county and city to do work, often with the Cooperative Extension Service located on Oleander, and I'm sure a lot of y'all head over there sometimes. The new extension director, relatively new, Lloyd Singleton, is a wonderful advocate for water quality, and if you haven't met him, you sure should. He's a real treasure to have here in Wilmington. So for 20 years, we've been doing stuff non-stop. Now you'll see here the different watersheds in which some work has been conducted by NC State. And by the way, sometimes with our friends at UNCW, and I do have a picture a little bit later trying to demonstrate that. But we have these 4 watersheds. I'm going to show at least a little something from each of these watersheds. We have a grant coming in that we're actually working with Mike Mallon on in the city in Bradley Creek. We'll find out if we get that probably within the next month. That's a pretty big effort. And then, of course, the star of today's show is Greenfield Lake. And we're just getting started. I mean, truly just getting started with some work in Greenfield Lake. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to focus really on the 4 blue star watersheds for just a bit. First off, up in the Smith Creek, one of the coolest things I've been able to do was do some work at airports across North Carolina. And we went to ILM, and we tried to determine if the land uses that they had on site, namely things like the general aviation apron, the taxiway with the massive grass areas, and a composite site which involved the terminal, to see what type of pollutant loads that they had. So we studied them. Is there an echo, or are you guys okay?
We're good.
That was my fault, Bill. I just turned the Facebook on my phone. I turned it off.
That's fine. No, you didn't even have to own that. That was great, Dana. Thank you. But when we set out to do monitoring, our monitoring will tend to be driven by little mini computers, very simple ones, that live inside automated samplers, so water quality samplers. And so we did that for the 3 different sites. And by the way, one of the coolest things was monitoring next day Harriers. And so these were some of the data that we got. And you can see some pretty low numbers, but a lot of you are like, okay, I see these numbers. What do they mean? Can you please put those into context? So that's what I'm going to do now very quickly. One of the things that we did a decade ago was
You can bring me my lap, Mike.
One of the things that we did a decade ago was we compared statistically water quality concentrations in healthy streams or in streams to benthos health. So if you guys ever go out and do creek sampling, you look at the critters that live in those creeks, the critters are either quite tolerant of polluted conditions to only living in sort of pristine or a high water quality conditions. And what we did is we did a statistical analysis where we compared the presence of highly sensitive, which means clean water, critters to the concentration in that water column. And what we came up with across our different regions of our state were these thresholds, these benchmarks that we would like to see present in our streams. And so therefore, what we'd like to see our stormwater control measures discharge concentrations at, all right? It's purely a statistical relationship. But long story short, as one might expect, you've got lower or cleaner nitrogen and phosphorus concentrations associated with higher benthos health, all right, or more sensitive benthos. And that enables us to create these standards that we can then compare our concentrations leaving certain land uses or certain stormwater control measures to. And so you can see here a threshold, a good threshold, which is what our general target is across our state. And you can see that for this airport, the majority of the pollutants that were coming off the airport were actually at or below the good threshold. That was for nitrogen. And the same story, it was even more true for phosphorus, and then similarly true for sediment. So when you look at this in aggregate, we could argue that the airport is actually discharging really low concentrations of sediment, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Now, that shouldn't be a shock, in great part because the majority of an airport is grassed, right? That they don't go out and fertilize. And so one of the things that we tried to point out with this study was that airports actually behave a lot like well-designed neighborhoods from a water quality perspective, as long as they're not throwing urea and stuff on their runways to melt ice. Okay, the next watershed that I want to move over to is Burnt Mill Creek. And we actually had about a decade of continuous work at Burnt Mill Creek. I'm only showing you one study. And it was in the bottoms. And what we did is we took 2 streets, roughly a block, a total block of run, or half a block of runoff. And we treated it. And we treated it with a few different types of stormwater control measures. We put in bioretention cells, okay, along the street. We put in permeable pavement that we actually had to sort of kick the water into the permeable pavement through flow diverters because the water was hanging out in the gutter instead. And then we used a proprietary system called Filtera, which has since been approved by the state, and use that to treat our runoff as well. So we monitored this as well as monitoring another street in the bottoms that did not have any stormwater control measures. And we came up with all of these data. And you're like, well, what these, I want to clue people in to the top arrow and the bottom arrow. The top arrow is what was coming off a non-treated street. Okay, look at those numbers. And then compare those to the numbers associated with the LID street, and you can see across the board, we are having a lot cleaner water leave the low impact development street than we are the controlled street. So there you go. And if we had a statistically significant change, you'll see that in the bottom in bold with a star. And so we did for most of the pollutants. All right. Another watershed that we did some work in, I want to say this drains straight to the Cape Fear River, is the Operations Center with the city of Wilmington. We started this project when Dave Mays was running it, and then we migrated over to Derek. Oh gosh, Derek, you guys know Derek, great guy, works at DOT now. And we finished up the report while Fred Royal was, so it spans many generations of stormwater services directors. So what we did here is we installed something called Littoral Shelves. If you look at the bottom of the slide, you'll see the Littoral Shelves, which are basically sand filters embedded in the pond. I'm going to show a video. I'm going to be quiet as the video runs. But what you're going to see is the pond. You're going to see the littoral shelf, and then you're going to see water leaving, leaving the facility. All right, so the main slug of water is the water that just leaves from the pond. But you all see that small little white pipe there that is discharging a little stream. That's the water that's come through the sand filter that was built essentially on the side of the pond. So those two sampling points are important. The city of Wilmington collected samples for us. It was then brought to a lab, and we looked at the concentrations of pollutants leaving, of pathogen indicator species, both E. coli and fecal coliform. And the red box is what came into the pond. The green box is what left the pond without going through the filter. And the blue box is what left the filter. Keep in mind that this is a logarithmic scale on the left, so these are really dramatic improvements. So while the pond itself did improve the concentration, what really improved it was water passing through the sand filter, all right? And so for in areas where we have an issue or a concern associated with pathogen concentrations, it certainly does seem that these types of amendments to ponds, I'll come back to this a little bit later, can make a pretty big difference. Now, we also tested a pair of these littoral shelf filters in a city, another city, North Carolina, East Carolina. That one is Rocky Mount. And I'm going to show you some data from those two ponds. And you'll see here from a nitrogen perspective, water that passed through the filter, which is shown in yellow, is a lot lower than the water that entered the pond and also the water that passed through the pond without going through the filter, okay? So what we're seeing here is a potential technology. Think about how many ponds are in the city of Wilmington. By my last count, there's something between 3,000 and 4,000 of them. Okay, that's a joke. But there are a lot of ponds. I think you guys would all agree. There's a lot of ponds in town. And think about the possibility of improving those ponds by incorporating some relatively simple, and it's not like I'll spend $10 and get good improvement here, but relatively simple retrofits. This to me is a real possibility if you're trying to remove pathogens, nitrogen, I don't show it, but also phosphorus. We made a major effort with the city of Wilmington on Hewlett's Creek. We got a big grant. And in fact, the woman with whom I worked on that came over to work with Extension. Many of y'all would know Erin Carey. And so we did a lot of work in Hewlett's Creek. We had 3 sites that had been a focus before the grant started. Then we added another like 6 of them, all right? So I'm gonna go ahead and show you some of the projects that were done in Hewlett's Creek. To me, probably the one that's the most impactful is one that we did at Longleaf Mall near the old time pottery. What we did is we took an island and we blew the island up and we claimed a bunch of parking stalls and we turned it into a bioretention cell. Now, how a bioretention cell works is water flows in. It's also called a rain garden. It passes through a media and then leaves through a pipe network. And you put plants in it and it works really nicely, all right? Here's one just up the street, up US 17 in Jacksonville that was under construction this winter before COVID hit. Well, before COVID hit us. And basically we put that type of technology into this parking median that is at Old Time Pottery. We monitored it for a couple of years and then we made changes to it. And you'll see these berms, I guess you want to call them, these little rolls or whatever. Those rolls are full of, ready for this, mushrooms. And we put mushrooms in. We actually have just one of these mushrooms. I think we used the turkey tail mushroom, so I'm not 100% sure. My grad student would know. We put mushrooms in to see if mycelia filtration would improve the performance. So we monitored it pre-mushroom, and we are now currently monitoring with mushrooms. And we've gotten a lot of data, particularly early on. We got a whole lot of data. We're still collecting data right now from the post mushroom. And I want you to know that this bioretention cell actually has worked very, very well for reducing pollutants. You can see the E. coli concentrations, and the average concentration leaving is 7 mpn per 100 milliliters. So that's really low. What's curious is after we retrofit it with mushrooms, the numbers have gotten higher. And so, but it is preliminary, so keep that in the back of your mind. So perhaps with more data, the numbers will come back in line. So maybe the mushrooms don't make a huge difference for pathogen removal. Maybe the standard design is good. Long story short, both of them do work. Okay, sometimes people like really fancy practices. Engineers tend to love fancy practices, but sometimes really simple practices are even more elegant. And so one of the things that we were able to do on Hewlett's Creek, and just think about the possibility of replicating this across the footprint of Wilmington, is we took a bridge deck that crossed over a trib to you. Actually, I don't know if this actually may not be a trib. This may be the main branch of Hewlett's. And diverted it to the side of the road off to the median, and just created a very simple infiltration channel. And this had just rained, and the water basically soaks into this and then soaks out the side. And as the water flows through the sand between the edge of the road and the creek, it gets filtered by the sand. So it's a very simple practice that worked very, very well. Well, I say that. We never monitored it, but we observed the hydrology, and it worked fine from a hydrologic standpoint. And then the other thing that we did, and this is, again, a very simple thing, and I want to encourage people to remember that at your home, the idea of disconnecting impermeable surfaces is probably the best thing you can do to reduce runoff on your property. But one of the things that we did at the municipal golf course is we actually we basically broke through the curb line and directed water from the street into a depression. And you can, if you drive down, gosh, I forget the name of that road, but you know where the Muni is. It goes right past, it kind of bisects the Muni. You'll see after a good rain, maybe after next Tuesday, you'll see a lot of water ponded in this area, and that's because it's now a stormwater control measure. All right. Now, the last thing I want to talk about from the Burnt Mill Creek project, the Hewlett's Creek project, that I know you can do at your house if you haven't done already, is disconnecting your impervious surfaces. We did this in the Windward Oaks subdivision. We picked 4 different properties and monitored how much runoff reduction we had from them, all right? And the way you monitor it really is not that hard. You put a little V-notch weir, which is that thing looks like a V, at the end of your grass, so the water's discharge flows down the grass and then flows up and over that little V-notch weir. And we monitor the flow of water as it passes over the weir, okay? And that enables us to figure out how much flow, how much water is leaving. So you can see we had 4 different sites. And most of them, we looked at 2 different downspout disconnects. You can see the installation going on at one of them. I mean, it's not particularly fancy, this work that we do. If it was, I wouldn't be able to do it. Apparently, it's tiring. And I kind of went through. And then you can see sometimes you invest a lot of money in sampling equipment, and then sometimes you just make it up with spare signs that you have laying around. All right, so this is what one of our monitoring setups, it's like, that's a lot of equipment for yeah, you're right, it's a lot of equipment for what is a very simple retrofit, but we basically tried to figure out how much runoff would be reduced by cutting your downspouts and forcing them to discharge onto your lawn. And so here's an example. From one site, we were able to infiltrate over 70% of the runoff that came off the roof just by disconnecting your downspout and having it flow over 12 or 14 feet of grass. Hopefully y'all are getting that this is an idea. If you have any any directly connected impervious surfaces, if you really want to make a big difference, just have it flow over your lawn. It can make a huge difference in terms of volume mitigation. Now, we did also do a little more study on this. We looked at the impact of infiltration rates, and it shouldn't be a shock that the highest infiltration rates of your soil had the highest volume reductions. Medium infiltration rates had medium volume reductions. And the lowest infiltration rate, well, I know it's not a shock, had the lowest volume reduction. But even the lowest infiltration rate had almost 40% volume reduction. So anytime you can discharge impervious surface and have it flow over grass, all right, provided it's not an overwhelming ratio of like 87 parts of pavement to 1 part of grass, you're going to see some improvement with your runoff volume mitigation. It's particularly a potent tool in New Hanover County. We also looked to see if we would improve nutrients by doing this. And we did, in general, see nutrient reduction. That's nitrate. And this is phosphorus. It looks like we had really good improvements. But sometimes, and Larry can test, that the data may not test out statistically. We couldn't tell you, I can't tell you for sure that we had phosphorus reduction, though it sure looks like we did. The statistics didn't quite back us up there. Okay. We did a study on bioswales. You really can't see bioswales because they're inside swales. It's like there's one there, and you're like, dude, I can't see it. I get that. But we studied one in Brunswick County off NC 211. And essentially what it is, you take the swale, you excavate a trench, you fill it with a media, and then we studied how well that thing worked. And we saw really good sediment reduction. We did not, surprisingly, we did not see any real pathogen improvement, but we did see a lot of sediment reduction. But it's such a simple practice. It's something that DOT is certainly considering in parts of our state. Okay, so that's the stuff. Those are all the different practices that we retrofitted in the Hewlett's Creek watershed, which now brings me to Greenfield Lake. And no, we are not behind the solar bees. But when we do rent the boats from you guys, Dana, my children enjoy that. When we do get those paddle wheelers and get out there and go paddling, I like to go over and see the solar bees and make sure they haven't been shot up yet. Okay, so in Greenfield Lake, we have one project that is just started, though my colleagues and friends at UNCW are a little ahead of me here. And then we have another one that we're keeping our fingers crossed gets funded. We'll start with the first project. And many of you, and I observed as I got to see your pictures, many of you have very good recollection of the 1980s. A few of you, a couple of the youngers of you obviously did not. But there was this commercial that BASF ran, and you might remember, we don't make the light bulb, we make it brighter, okay? So one of the things that we do with ponds is we don't make the ponds, we make the ponds better. And what we try to do is put in improvements to ponds. The ponds are here, they're not going away, but let's see if we can make them work better. We kind of demonstrated that earlier with that municipal, the city ops pond that we studied here in Wilmington. But we're also doing this at the Surge Care facility on 17th Street. And Larry Cahoon and Mike Mallon are a major part of this project. They have actually been sampling it before we got our equipment installed, but we finally got our grant set up. NC State, sometimes granting is not the fastest. And the way we've done, and there we are, just proof that NC State and UNCW are friends. That's fine, we're good friends. And Larry, there you are looking all happy, wearing Mother Earth. I think I'm wearing the exact same shirt I'm wearing today, which tells you a lot about my closet. And this Dr. Mallon as well. And we're monitoring the water as it comes in and as it leaves now we just installed, I mean, truly just yesterday installed 2 samplers to monitor this. And so for my good friends at UNCW, we will chit chat with y'all about how to collect those samples. But we did just go ahead and install them, and we're thrilled to be working with UNCW on this project. And what we're going to do here is monitor it now in its current state, and then we're going to retrofit it with something called a bioreactive permeable berm. Or shoot, yeah, a BPM. I think we're just going to call it Bioretention Permeable Berm. That's going to be installed this late spring. Oh, strike that. Well, late spring as a year from now. So about 9 months from now. We have put one in Jacksonville already, and hopefully this technology will take off. Yes, they're not attractive. I get that. They're not. It's not the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. But if it makes the ponds work better, a lot of those ponds aren't the most beautiful things you've ever seen either. Okay, so that's the surge care site that we're working with UNCW. The other one that we have a grant into the Clean Water Management Trust Fund is to put in floating treatment wetlands on one of the arms of Greenfield Lake proper. Okay, they are a floating treatment wetland is a hydroponic system. It's, you know, people grow food in, you know, hydroponics for food. Well, we're just trying to take nutrients out of this water with dangling roots. They float, which is cool. So they're always on. They're always on top of the lake. They float. They can be amenities. We are going to actually purchase them as part of this grant if we get it from these guys. But these are not the only folks out there that sell the mats. But we are going to be getting our mats from these guys this time. We've studied them before. Here's a project from the early part of the last decade in Durham. And you can see they certainly do support vegetation, but all those things are, those mats are all floating and they're supporting wetland plants. And in the site in Durham, we were able to get really good phosphorus removal, and we observed some nitrogen removal as well. In fact, I had a data slide on the subject. So those little X's, those X's are the treatment, the solid diamonds and squares, that's what came in. And so you can see, again, comparing to this good threshold, that particularly at our museum pond, which had really high coverage, about 20% coverage, we had surprisingly good phosphorus removal. So the idea is that you can take these ponds, again, and make them work better by putting retrofits in them. And a lot of this we're trying to pioneer work here in Wilmington. So to sum things up, by the way, those are Shirley temples. All the kids have Shirley temples. There's nothing potent in them. There's been I consider a 20-year love affair between NC State University and the city of Wilmington. I have been actually doing projects here for 20 years continuously, which is amazing. It's the only city in the state that I can say that about. I can't, not even Raleigh, all right? And that's a testament in my mind to the great stormwater leadership that has been in place in the city of Wilmington. The fact that they have cared about water quality. I know Mike Mallon has been running his ambient sampling program for a long time. Look, that you might take that for granted here. Trust me, that is not the norm across our state. Most of my efforts have been in Burnt Mill and Hewlett's Creek. Burnt Mill for the first decade and Hewlett's Creek for the second decade. But our attention is now turning to Greenfield Lake. We're thrilled to be working with Cape Fear River Watch and UNCW. And most of my new effort now is about retrofitting ponds, just trying to make these ponds that we have work better. So with that, I am delighted to engage in a conversation about the work that we're doing here in town or elsewhere in North Carolina, and to leave you with 3 of my highlights from my time here in Wilmington. With that, it's Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dr.
You're welcome.
Hunt.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Everybody, I have you muted, so please unmute yourself to ask your question.
Hi, this is Amy McLean. I was so happy to see you highlight the airport. I met you out there a couple times.
Hey, yes.
I wanted to ask, what's the process or the timeline to get these innovative methods turned into state requirements for stormwater control measures? How does that process work, and how long does it take?
That's a great question. Well, it helps a lot that we have a great cooperator who runs the stormwater unit at DEQ. And we also had that previous to the woman that's in charge now. And so what we do is when there is a preponderance of evidence that an amendment works, a change to a practice or a new practice overall, we will propose something to DEQ, and they will send that out for a review among the design community. They have to agree with it at its basis to begin with, all right? But then they'll send it out to review to the design community, and the group will get together and come up with design standards, or what will happen is NC State will recommend design standards that the larger community would approve, and then that will find its way into the stormwater BMP or the stormwater control measure design manual. How quickly does it take? The answer is, and Dr. Cahoon can share it with me, it depends, right? That's everyone's favorite. It depends. But if people are really hot to trot, or it's a really big improvement, we've been able to see from the time the project got installed to the time a change occurred to be as short as about 3 years. The norm is probably closer to 5. But if it, for example, with bioretention, we observed a decade and a half ago, even longer than that, almost 2 decades ago, that we were putting the wrong type of fill media into bioretention, such that when water would come through and flow through the bioretention cell, it could actually get more polluted because they weren't very careful about the media. They weren't worried about the phosphorus and the nitrogen content of the media. So we did some studies on that in Greensboro and in Chapel Hill. You know how much I love bringing that sucker over to Chapel Hill. And we learned that the media was bad. And so we made an immediate recommendation to DEQ. And that study was started in 2001. And by 2004, so we had the data by 2003. And we said, there's a problem with the state's design standard. By 2004, it was fixed. So, but that's the fastest we've ever seen one. Like, we've been working on the floating treatment wetlands for a while. You can use them right now in North Carolina, but it took about 4 or 5 years to be able to get those implemented. So, for example, my permeable berms, which I believe are going to make a pretty big difference, because it's not that different of a technology than putting the littoral shelf filters on a pond that we've tested. By the end of our grant with the Cape Fear River Watch, my hunch is this will be the final nail in the coffin in a positive way. It's the final firework or whatever that will probably get that practice approved. And then DEQ will promote it by basically giving an incentive for your local designers to use it. They'll say, hey, if you're trying to remove nitrogen and phosphorus, if you add one of these permeable berms, you'll reduce your nitrogen and phosphorus concentration by 10%. And that can make a pretty big difference to get that type of amendment adopted. That was a long answer to an important question.
It was a great answer. Let me just interrupt 1 second. I encourage everybody to show your faces for the discussion because it's just more fun. And I understand sometimes you don't like to do that, but thank you. Larry, did you have something?
No, I want to say, Bill, that's a very nice job you did there.
Thank you.
And you know, as a resident here, I certainly appreciate all the work you've done in Wilmington. I've had a sense that our stormwater folks here in the city of Wilmington have been very forward thinking. To the degree that I've had interactions with them, they've always been very positive. So I think we are very fortunate here to have people who really care about doing this right.
I only can say amen. That is the city. And a lot of times it's.
You can't see me with my bathing suit on.
Well, if you want to show me your bathing suit, it's okay. Just make sure it's appropriately covering everything. This city has had, I would put it up there with Charlotte and Greensboro in Durham as the cities with the longest continuous embracement of stormwater and improving stormwater and innovation in stormwater. Those are the 4 places that, like, for 20 years, there has been this. And for Durham, it's been because they've been in the Neuse River Basin. And I'm not knocking other cities, because we've worked with Goldsboro, Rocky Mount, Fayetteville, Raleigh. New Bern has been great. Kinston has been great. Wilson is great. There's a lot of great cities in our state. Jacksonville, we've been doing some projects in Jacksonville. But Wilmington, just for 20 years, and honestly, I think it's because of Dave Mays, that Dave has set this, Dave has set this standard, and his successors have followed it. And the guy you got in there right now, Fred Royal, fantastic.
Yep.
Dr. Hunt,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the stormwater ditches that we have in Wilmington. I wonder if you have any ideas about improving them. They are such a headache for those of us that live near them. The maintenance crew has been reduced to 3 from 8, so they're not getting maintained, and it's just a nightmare.
Yeah. The ditch, it depends on the ditch. Okay. One of the things, and you guys chose to live in Wilmington, many of you chose to live here for various reasons, right? One of which, my hunch is that it's near the ocean. It's surrounded by estuaries and tidal creeks and all those things. Well, because of that, you've got ditches to convey water. And when it's flat, the ditches are going to stay ponded for longer periods of time. And in so many respects, some of those ditches, you kind of got them. Now, those ditches where the water doesn't move particularly fast out of, I know this is I'm trying to make you feel better about your ditches. They do improve water quality. Like, you're getting, when water lingers in there for a while, you're going to get things like sedimentation to occur, and you can get improvement to water quality. Now, from a flood standpoint, that doesn't help you get the water out of there. For ditches that you would consider more free-flowing, and they do exist in town, there are some things that you can do you can put very simple check dams in, particularly when they're overlying sandier soils. You can put low-lying check dams or berms that will help encourage the water to go down. If you do have ditches that tend to stay wet, you can beautify them with vegetation. Excuse me one second. My children are all back. My best friend lives here. And so when I scheduled this with Dana, I picked August because I said, okay, good. I'll bring my whole family down to Wilmington on vacation. And then on Saturday morning, I'll give this talk with everybody. And here's the best part. And the university will pay for it, right? I'm like, but then COVID came. And it's not like I can tell my kids, no, we're not going to go to Wilmington. So we're here, and my best buddy has taken them out. But they're waving at me right now. So there we go. In fact, I'll tell you what I'll do is before it's over, I'll have them all come in, and they'll say hello. But when that happens, the show is over because it's going to be a cacophony.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question about the mycelia that you're using in the little bags on longleaf mall.
Yes, ma'am.
They get wet, they get dry. How do they do they last forever? Do they reproduce? Do they rot? I mean, what happens to them?
Is that Betty? Is that you?
Yes, that's Betty who's hiding.
That's great, Betty. Great question. They actually do want to stay moist. So as it rains, that's a good thing. All right. Part of the reason that we believe that the mycelia, well, there's 2 reasons that by adding the mushrooms, we didn't see any improvement. One of which is that the thing was working great before we added the mushrooms. And we didn't know that when we added them. Okay. Like, you're not going to get better results than 7 NPM geometric mean. That's just really good. Okay. Yeah. But the second reason we don't think they improved it was that it didn't. Remember last summer how dry it was for a while? Yeah. And so the mycelia, we think most of them died. They did come back to some extent, but they do need to get wet, and being wet is okay. And staying moist is ideal. It's long periods of drought are what the killer is. So we're also studying it in Raleigh on state campus. And in that particular case, hold on. You guys see me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. In that particular case, we are seeing better viability for the mycelia. So we do want them moist. We don't want them being wet is fine. Being drying out and staying dry is not good. That's your answer. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
I have a question. Do you look at, so it seems like these technologies can be either applied in new ponds that are being put in or new situations, or they, you know, they seem amenable to retrofit. What's the cost benefit of retrofitting existing ponds?
Right. Great question. Yeah. And obviously it depends on where the pond is located. One of the things that that our legislature passed that I actually liked, okay, so just remember that I'm an optimist, okay, is that they enabled stormwater ponds to become nutrient banks. Now, that's a real plus. And so what happens is, let's say you have a given pond, it's been permitted, it's out there, it's doing its thing, all right? And you have some enterprising developer or property owner, we'll call it property owner, who says, you know, I can make my pond work better. And I'm gonna put in one of these permeable berms, and I'm gonna, or floating islands, and I'm gonna take out more nitrogen and phosphorus. The state has to catch up with the legislature. But what's gonna happen is that if you, and I shouldn't say catch up, it's already there actually. That once the state gives credit to a pond that has, if you put a permeable reactive berm in there, okay, and the state acknowledges that it takes out 20% more nitrogen, then the person that goes in and retrofits can then take that 20% nitrogen that has a monetary value on it. All right, in certain watersheds in our state, they have priced like every pound of nitrogen's worth $25, and every pound of phosphorus is worth $150, right? And so if you know that you put one of these permeable berms in, and over the course of 10 years or 20 years, it's going to take out 200 pounds of nitrogen and 20 pounds of phosphorus, well, you can multiply 200 by 25 and 20 by 150, and cha-ching, you got a number. And so that can be sold on the market. And what you do is you basically sell it to a developer who's unable to meet nitrogen and phosphorus goals on her or his development. So where is this going on? This is going on in Raleigh, New Bern, Wilson, Greensboro. Where could it go on? Anywhere that nitrogen and phosphorus are considered target pollutants. So where in Wilmington is this a target? Are they target pollutants? Greenfield Lake. So one of the things that Wilmington, the city, can do, and I know I'm talking to people that have some influence, certainly people that know people, right? You can tell them, hey, I think we should set up a fund or set up some program where we incentivize people to retrofit our wet ponds. It can certainly be done. And they can incentivize them to remove nitrogen and phosphorus. And by the same token, once you do that, you necessarily are removing pathogens or pathogen indicator species. So you buy one, you get two.
I would say from a messaging standpoint, in the land of environmental activism, we should be communicating external costs and external benefits, and you know, understanding businesses and developers look at bottom lines in terms of the data that they can see and the hard money. It would be great to have some really good data that just projects the costs relative to the environment and everything else that these things benefit. and share that around and encourage folks that that means something, even if it doesn't affect their specific bottom line.
Yeah, and I will tell you, you're right, Dana, and I do want to mention, like, the retrofit that we're going to do at Surge Care is about $4,000.
Right.
That's what the contractor. That's the price. $4,000.
And just one more thing from me, and then I'll stop talking. But to the Greenfield Lake project that Bill was talking about, Cape Fear River Watch is the administrator of that grant, working, as he said, with UNCW, NC State, City of Wilmington, and also Moffitt and Nickel engineering firm. They're going to do some vegetation work, and this is a long-term project. This is phase one. Phase one is a few years, and then we're seeking more funds for phase two to do even more work in terms of engineering the property. But you can keep an eye on our website, the Greenfield Lake tab on our website. I just put up Dr. Mallon's data yesterday on the website. Once Dr. Hunt sends me his updates and photos from yesterday's fun, I'll pop that up there so you can keep track of this work. And then when the Greenfield Lake Boathouse opens, Audrey is going to be out there and supporting that effort as well, along with other team members, in putting some material together so we can share with all of our great guests that visit the Greenfield Lake, so we can really get the word out on this project. So I'm super excited about it.
I think we all are.
I think I've got a question about the project. So the way that I've understood this is a lot about remediating the stormwater that's coming into Jumping Ground Branch and surrounding, right? Is there any part of the project that's also going to be doing some sediment remediation for what's already in the lake? I think I remember part of Nick's thesis said that there was a decent amount of phosphorus coming up from that sediment that had been stored already.
Do you know Dan or Larry?
Larry, you're muted.
I know that we've had some conversations with Fred Royal et al. About where the highest amount of phosphorus is located in the lake. And there had been some, informal discussion about dredging.
Mm-hmm.
I think we still need to do some more three-dimensional assessment on that. We had surface sediment data, and there's certainly some hot spots in the lake that are worth looking into. But with dredging, if you're going to do that, you want to know how far down you want to go.
Right.
And it would.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had done full profile or just surface sediment.
Yeah, we haven't got that yet, but it can be done.
Cool.
You just have to take a longer course. And we were interested in that, but we were not able to sample last year because the lake was toxic the whole time. Last summer we had just continual algae blooms, and
Mm-hmm.
Mike and I were just afraid to go out on the lake and get poisoned.
I don't blame you. They hit us too. So, yeah.
But it can be done, and we've had some conversation about that. I think that is important. There's a lot of phosphorus in the lake, and we're pretty sure that it supports nitrogen fixation by cyanobacteria. So bottom line, if you don't control the phosphorus inputs, you can't control the nitrogen inputs either.
Right. Well, and I don't want the benefits of the remediation for the stormwater coming into the lake to be outweighed by what's already there and leaching out the sediment.
Yeah, it's kind of a philosophical thing. You start off by stopping doing bad things,
right?
Allowing too much to come in the first place, and then you worry about making things better. The project we've got underway hopefully cuts off one of the major sources of phosphorus, new phosphorus to the lake, and new nitrogen. And then we take a hard look at getting out what's already in there. Lake's in a tough spot. It's an urban watershed with a lot of impervious cover. We know that stormwater ponds and other features do help wetlands. Some of the tribs to the lake are better than others in that regard. The two that we're working on, and Bill is talking about Squash Branch, for using the floating wetlands. And that one and Jumping Run Branch are the two that seem to be most problematic right now.
I always enjoy watching Maddie and Dr. Cahoon talk, have little comments. If you don't know, Maddie was his student, and so they'll go back and forth for hours if we let them.
Right.
I'm going to read a question that's in the chat. How much maintenance do these new measures need to perform well long-term? Are we talking specifically Greenfield Lake, Amy? Or wherever?
Wherever. I'm sure some are more sensitive to maintenance than others.
That is correct. That's a great question. And again, it's another one of it depends. So the Littoral Shelf sand filter, which I think is going to have similar maintenance to the permeable reactive berm, needed to be raked off with one of those hard garden rakes once every 6 months. Well, at least at 2 of our 3 sites. One site didn't need it, but the others did. And so that's now, it's not a particularly hard maintenance task, but it is a necessary maintenance task. And then at some point, you will have to remove the berm and replace it. And if at some point it's going to fill up, it will take up all the phosphorus it's going to take up. All right. How quickly does that happen? In the studies that we've looked at, we feel like we have at least a decade of it. But I can envision a high phosphorus or high zinc, whatever, watershed that it might only be a handful of years before it has to be removed. All right, so that's it. Now the floating islands, different story. They would need to be inspected to make sure they don't float away or anything. But as long as they're tied up, there's no obvious. I mean, eventually, I guess they would stop working, but we think they could have multiple decade lives. Now, to maintain them, you just gotta make sure they don't float away, and particularly for long-term phosphorus removal, you probably want to start harvesting the vegetation every few years. But from a nitrogen standpoint, we don't think you need to harvest anything. They can just float and take up some amount of nitrogen and send it up into the atmosphere. So it just depends on the one I did not share with you was this upflow filter, where the water comes into the outlet structure and then flows up through a filter inside the outlet structure or on the backside of the dam. The maintenance on that was every 3 to 6 months, and it was onerous. And so we were like, I'm not going to recommend that. And so maintenance really does matter before we bring something to the state and say, hey, we think you guys should consider this. It's not just performance, but it is projected maintenance. And if we can tell in a study that NC State does that the maintenance burden is going to be high, because we're usually going to look at it with just 1 or 2 years of life, and we can tell it's a really high maintenance burden for maybe a marginal benefit, we won't bother recommending it. We try to pick things that we believe will work and have and the maintenance burden is not so high that it would preclude it from ever being selected. Great question. And the second one you had was about stormwater control measure design standards due to rainfall, high rainfall. For any of you who have seen any of I almost gave that presentation today. Dana picked this one. I'm thrilled that she did. All right. But I have a talk that I've been going around. I've been sort of an evangelist of new rainfall. And we have the rainfall data that we have from southeastern North Carolina particularly are extremely, I think that as long as you guys are quiet, you're good. That's my kids. Are off the charts. They're off the, like Wilmington's experienced in the last 20 years, a 500 and a 1,000 year rain. Well, what are the chances of that really happening? And the answer is not great, okay? Like really, really, really low. And so one of the things I've really been promoting is adjusting the design standards, the rainfalls that we use for large storm events in eastern North Carolina, southeast North Carolina specifically. DEQ is aware of it. You have to have some political cover for that to happen. And in the executive branch, we have it. legislative branch, we don't have it right now. Not that I don't think there's a chance, but we don't have it yet. On the flip side, the legislature has given us some money by way of UNC Chapel Hill, believe it or not, to look at what we can do to make stormwater control measures more resilient to large storms. And we are in the middle of that effort right now. And we will have a project for the legislature, a report for legislature early next year on that. So it's not like our politicians have turned a blind eye on it, but certainly some are probably more willing to require larger storms to be treated than others. But this is not an issue that I have given up on even within this legislature. I do think that there's enough people on both sides of the aisle that if a cogent argument is put forth, that we could see some changes to how the types of storms that we design stormwater control measures for. Good question.
Well, we're coming up on 10:15. Does anybody have any further questions for Bill?
You guys want to see my kids?
Yeah, let's see your kids.
How many of them are there?
I have 18. No. Hold on. There we go. I'm going to show you, you're going to get a sampler set. Come on in, big boy. This is Charlie.
Hey, Charlie.
Say hi, Miss Dana.
I'm Stana.
Charlie's
Hi,
the most
Charlie.
fun to be an engineer.
Hi, Miss Stana.
Hey, bud.
This is Bill. He's my namesake.
Hi, Bill.
All right.
Hi, Miss Stana.
Come over here. Come over here.
Hi.
That's Claire.
Oh, hi, Blair.
We're in the Wolfpack clothes. Here we go. This is Annie. That was Annie. She was there. She's good. Here we go. And that's Joseph.
Hey, Joseph.
Joseph's got his New Hanover County shirt, Wrightsville Beach. He's paying tribute to Bob Marley today.
Nice.
Here we
Well,
go.
you guys are amazing. I'm so happy that to have met you. You guys are so cute.
Well, thank you, Dana. We appreciate that.
It's so great that you came to join us, Dr. Hunt. I wish that it was in person, but this has been amazing. Everybody, thank you so much for joining. This recording will go up on our YouTube channel, and we'll share that in all the ways so you can share it to the world. Please do. And thanks again, and hope to see you all soon, and be safe out there. We'll hope this new storm heads out into the blue and passes us by.
Goes between us and Bermuda, right?
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Take care, guys. Thanks for coming. It's good seeing you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Okay, we're going to turn that off.
Bye.
Bye, Tom. Great to see you.
Bye.
Bye, Jeannie.